She grew up believing that love was something simple, something that stayed forever if you protected it carefully enough. Her name was Linda, a woman who had learned early in life how to carry more weight than her small shoulders should have held. She lived most of her years in a quiet American town where everyone knew one another, and where dreams often stayed dreams. But Linda always hoped for more, not for herself, but for her daughter, Laura. Linda had Laura when she was young. She remembered holding that tiny baby in her arms and promising to give her everything she never had. Life was not kind, and raising a child alone was never the plan, but the day Laura's father walked away, Linda understood she had no choice but to be both parents. She never complained. She worked 2 jobs at times, sometimes 3, just to keep their small apartment warm and to put food on the table. She wanted Laura to feel safe, loved, and unburdened. If someone had to carry stress, she preferred it to be her. People in town often admired her strength, though few truly understood her struggles. She would wake up before sunrise to clean offices, then rush home to prepare Laura's breakfast before sending her to school. Later, she would head to her second job at a local store. Linda never had much, but she always found joy in small moments, like the way Laura smiled when she brought home a small surprise, or how they sat together on the porch during summer evenings, talking about nothing and everything. From a young age, Laura was bright, charming, and full of ideas. Linda encouraged her, supported her school projects, attended every recital, and saved every drawing. She wanted her daughter to grow with confidence, to believe the world would open its doors for her. And for a long time, it seemed that they were truly close. Linda believed their bond was unbreakable. But life shifted gradually. As Laura became a teenager, she started craving more than what their little town could offer. She wanted wealth, attention, and a lifestyle that Linda could never afford. Linda never blamed her for dreaming big. She simply wished her daughter understood that money was not the only key to happiness. When Laura left for college, Linda felt a mix of pride and fear. She had worked endlessly to save enough for her daughter's education, sometimes skipping meals so Laura would never have to. She wanted Laura to experience a life different from her own, a life filled with opportunities. But college changed Laura in ways Linda did not expect. Her daughter returned with new friends, new habits, and new expectations. She began to look at Linda not with love, but with impatience, sometimes embarrassment. Linda told herself it was just a phase, that Laura would find her way back. She kept giving, kept supporting, and kept believing. Yet the distance grew. Phone calls became shorter, visits became rare, and conversations often ended with Laura asking for money. Still, Linda gave whatever she had, even when it meant going without. Over the years, Linda started to notice something else, a coldness in Laura's behavior. A sharpness that hadn't been there before. She shrugged it off, convincing herself that stress or ambition must be changing her daughter. She never once imagined that the love she poured into her child could one day be used against her. Despite everything, Linda still held on to hope. She believed deeply that a mother's love was strong enough to survive anything. Even when Laura argued, even when she pushed her away, Linda stayed soft. She told herself that her daughter just needed time to grow, to understand, to appreciate. Their relationship continued to shift like sand slipping through fingers. Linda tried to keep them connected by suggesting small trips or activities they used to enjoy. Most of the time, Laura declined. But Linda never gave up. She believed that one day, her daughter would remember the closeness they once shared. As years passed, Linda's life stayed simple. She still lived in the same small apartment, still worked hard, still dreamed quietly. Her biggest wish was to take a trip somewhere beautiful with Laura, maybe visit old castles, lakes, and faraway places they had once talked about when Laura was a child. She wanted memories, not gifts. Moments, not money. So when Laura eventually suggested a trip to Scotland, Linda felt her heart warm with hope. It felt like a sign that her daughter wanted to reconnect, that maybe she finally saw value in spending time together. Linda imagined long walks, shared meals, and laughter echoing between mountains and old streets. She didn't know then that this trip would not bring them closer. She didn't know that Scotland would change her life in ways she never expected. She didn't know that her heart, once so full, would soon break in a place far from home. All she knew was that she loved her daughter. And she believed, with all her heart, that love would be enough. Linda had always dreamed of seeing new places, but she never imagined she would actually get the chance. When her daughter, Laura, suggested a trip to Scotland, it felt like a gift she had been waiting for her whole life. She remembered the excitement in her chest when Laura said it. It felt sudden, almost surprising, but Linda didn't question it. She wanted to believe her daughter was finally trying to reconnect. For weeks, Linda thought about the trip every day. She imagined green hills stretching far into the distance, old stone castles standing proudly against the sky, and quiet lakes that reflected the clouds like mirrors. She hoped this trip would bring back the closeness she once shared with Laura. She hoped they would talk, laugh, and maybe understand each other again. The thought alone made her heart feel lighter. The day they left, Linda felt nervous but excited. She packed only a small suitcase, choosing simple clothes and a few personal things. She didn't want to be a burden. She noticed how Laura moved quickly, checking her phone, giving short answers. Linda tried to ignore the tension. She told herself that once they reached Scotland, everything would feel different. When they arrived, the air felt fresh and cool, almost crisp. Linda stepped out of the airport and looked around with wide eyes. She had never seen anything like it. The rolling hills, the old buildings, and the soft grey clouds made the landscape look like a painting. She breathed in deeply and felt something inside her unwind. Maybe this was the beginning of something good. They traveled by train to a small village. The ride was quiet. Laura spent most of it scrolling through her phone, while Linda stared out the window, watching fields pass by like moving dreams. She wanted to share her excitement, but Laura didn't seem interested. Still, Linda kept smiling, hoping her daughter would warm up. The village was charming, with narrow streets, stone cottages, and flowers hanging from windows. Linda fell in love with it immediately. She felt peaceful just walking through it. She imagined exploring every corner, taking photos, and enjoying quiet moments with her daughter. She hoped Laura felt the same. They checked into a small inn run by an older couple, Nathan and Claire. They greeted Linda kindly, noticing her warm smile and gentle voice. Laura, however, seemed distant. She barely looked at them and quickly asked for the room keys. Linda apologized on her behalf, feeling embarrassed but trying to hide it. During the first few days, Linda tried to make plans. She suggested visiting old castles, taking short hikes, or eating at local cafes. But Laura always had an excuse. She felt tired. She wanted to rest. She had work to do on her phone. Linda felt her heart sink a little each time, but she didn't complain. She reminded herself that spending time together in any way still mattered. One evening, Linda walked alone through the village because Laura said she wasn't feeling well. The sky was soft and blue, with the sun slowly setting behind the hills. Linda felt calm, but also lonely. She noticed couples talking, families laughing, and travelers taking photos. She wished her daughter were beside her. She wished things were still like they used to be. When she returned to the inn, she found Laura sitting at a table, typing quickly on her phone. She didn't look up when Linda walked in. Something felt wrong, but Linda pretended not to notice. She sat quietly and watched her daughter's face, wondering what thoughts were behind that cold expression. The next morning, Laura suggested they take a walk to see a nearby lake. It was the first time she had shown interest in anything. Linda felt a spark of hope. She nodded eagerly, feeling grateful. They walked together through a forest path, the sound of birds filling the air. The lake appeared slowly through the trees, calm and silver under the cloudy sky. For a moment, Linda thought things were finally getting better. The scene was beautiful, and she wanted to believe her daughter brought her there to share something special. But as they reached the water's edge, Laura's expression changed. Her face was distant, unreadable. Linda felt a strange heaviness settle over her, but before she could speak, Laura stepped aside and pretended to check her phone. The silence between them felt uncomfortable, almost sharp. Linda stood there quietly, trying to pretend everything was fine, but something inside her whispered that trouble was coming. She didn't know then that this peaceful lake, this calm morning, and this quiet moment would be the last memory she and her daughter shared together before everything changed. For now, Linda held on to hope, even though the cracks in their relationship were growing deeper with every passing minute. Linda woke the next morning feeling strangely uneasy, as if her heart already knew something her mind had not yet understood. The sun had barely risen, and the inn was quiet. She reached for her phone to check the time, but it was not on the bedside table. She frowned, thinking she might have misplaced it. She looked through her bag, then her coat pockets. Nothing. She told herself she must have left it in the hallway or at the dining area, though that was not like her. She walked down to the small breakfast room, expecting to see Laura already eating, but the table was empty. Only Nathan, the inn owner, stood behind the counter preparing coffee. He smiled warmly at her. "Good morning, Linda. Your daughter left early. She said she needed to step out for a bit." Linda forced a small smile. "Did she say where she was going?" Nathan shook his head gently. "She just said she had something important to take care of." Linda nodded and sat down, trying to reassure herself. Maybe Laura went for a walk. Maybe she needed fresh air. Maybe she needed time alone. Linda tried to believe these things, but a cold, uneasy feeling stayed in her chest. After breakfast, she went back to their room, hoping Laura had left a note or message. But the room looked strangely empty. Too empty. Linda slowly opened the closet and stared at the space where their suitcases should have been. Only one suitcase remained. Hers. Laura's was gone. Linda's hands trembled as she opened her own suitcase. Her clothes were still inside, but something important was missing. Her envelope of savings. The one she kept tucked under her clothes. The money she had worked years to save. It was gone. Linda felt the room tilt slightly. She grabbed the edge of the bed to steady herself. Her breath came out shaky and uneven. She looked again, hoping she was mistaken. But the envelope was nowhere. She searched every corner of the room, every drawer, every pocket. Nothing. Linda sank onto the bed, her heart aching in her chest. She whispered to herself, "No, she wouldn't. She wouldn't do this to me." But deep down, a quieter voice answered back. She would. Her hands shook as she went to the front desk. Nathan noticed the panic on her face. "Linda, are you all right?" She swallowed hard. I can't find Laura. And I think she took my money." Nathan and Claire exchanged a troubled look. Claire approached gently. "Sit down, dear. Tell us what happened." Linda explained everything in a weak voice, her words trembling. She talked about the missing suitcase, the empty space in her luggage, and her missing phone. Claire reached for her hand. "We're so sorry. Is there someone we can call for you?" Linda felt her chest tighten. "My phone is gone too. I don't know what to do." Nathan frowned thoughtfully. "She must have left very early. I didn't even hear her go." Claire brought Linda a glass of water. Linda held it with shaky hands. "She took my bank card," she finally whispered, realizing it in that moment. "I kept it in the side pocket of my bag. It's gone too." Nathan immediately checked their computer. "Linda, earlier this morning, I noticed a taxi leaving the village at around 6. I didn't think anything of it. Maybe she took it." Linda felt the world around her crumble. She remembered the quiet walk by the lake the day before. Laura's distant expression. The uncomfortable silence. All the missed opportunities to connect. Suddenly, they made sense. Her daughter had not invited her to Scotland to repair their relationship. She had brought her here to get rid of her. The truth landed on her like a heavy weight. Laura had taken her phone, her money, her bank card, her belongings. She was alone in a foreign country with nothing. "What am I supposed to do now?" Linda whispered, her voice thin and hollow. Claire sat beside her and placed a hand on her shoulder. "You're not alone, dear. We'll help you." Those words broke something inside Linda. She covered her face and cried quietly, the pain spilling out in soft, heartbreaking sobs. She had always believed that her love for Laura was enough to hold them together. She never imagined her own daughter could betray her so deeply. Hours passed in a blur. Nathan helped her contact the local authorities. They listened, took notes, and promised to investigate. But they also explained that tracking someone across borders could take time. Linda felt lost. Every memory of Laura, her first steps, her laughter as a child, the promises she made flashed through her mind, now twisted with pain. She kept repeating to herself, "Why would she do this? What did I do wrong?" But no matter how many times she asked, there was no answer. As evening approached, Linda sat in the small lobby of the inn, holding a warm cup of tea. She stared out the window at the quiet street, her heart heavy but still beating. She had nothing left. But she was still alive. She did not know yet that this terrible moment was the beginning of something new, something she never expected. For now, she just sat quietly, trying to absorb the pain, unaware that this betrayal would eventually lead her down a path of strength she had never known before. Linda spent the first night in a fog of fear and heartbreak. She lay awake in the small inn room, staring at the ceiling, wondering how her life had fallen apart so quickly. The sounds of the quiet village outside felt distant, almost unreal. She was in another country, without money, without a phone, and without the one person she thought she could trust. The betrayal clung to her chest like a heavy weight. But when morning came, she forced herself to sit up. She knew she could not stay frozen forever. Even though she felt weak, she still had a small spark of strength left inside her. She brushed her hair, washed her face, and tried to steady her breathing. She reminded herself that she had survived many hard moments in life before. She would get through this too. She went downstairs to the dining area, where Claire greeted her with a warm, gentle smile. "Good morning, Linda. I made you some tea. You need to eat something." Linda nodded quietly and sat down. Her hands were cold, and her eyes looked tired. Claire placed a plate of warm toast in front of her. "You're safe here. Take your time." Nathan joined them a moment later. "We spoke about your situation last night," he said kindly. "You can stay as long as you need." Linda felt tears gather in her eyes again. "Thank you. I don't know how to repay you." Claire touched her hand softly. "Not everything needs to be repaid. Sometimes, kindness is enough." Their kindness steadied her heart. She still felt broken, but she was no longer completely alone. Later that day, Linda met with a local officer again to discuss her case. They explained the challenges, the paperwork, and how the process might take weeks. Linda nodded quietly, absorbing the information even though she felt overwhelmed. She walked back to the inn slowly, her thoughts heavy. When she returned, Claire was arranging flowers near the front desk. She looked up and smiled. "How about a small walk? It might help clear your mind." Linda agreed, and they walked through the village together. The narrow streets, stone cottages, and small shops felt comforting. Children ran through the lanes, laughing. Tourists took pictures. Life was still moving, even though hers felt like it had stopped. Claire guided her to a local craft market. "We come here every weekend," she said. "People sell handmade things, jewelry, scarves, paintings, all sorts of little treasures." Linda walked slowly through the stalls, touching soft knitted scarves and admiring colorful pottery. Something about the place felt warm and familiar. Claire stopped at a small booth filled with handmade keychains and small wooden carvings. "Do you like crafts, Linda?" Linda sighed softly. "I used to. When Laura was little, I made small things for her school events. But I haven't done anything like that in years." Claire smiled gently. "Maybe you should try again. Sometimes creating something helps heal the heart." Her words stayed with Linda. When they returned to the inn, Claire brought her a small box of simple craft supplies, thread, beads, ribbons, and a few tools. "Just try," Claire said softly. "You don't have to make anything perfect. Just let your hands move." That night, Linda sat at a small table by the window. She looked at the supplies and felt an old memory surface, Laura's smile when she used to make her handmade hair clips. Linda blinked back tears and picked up the thread. She began slowly, her hands shaky at first. But as the minutes passed, she felt a calmness she hadn't felt in days. She made a small keychain, simple and charming. It wasn't perfect, but it was hers. The next morning, Nathan noticed it. "Did you make this?" he asked, impressed. Linda blushed slightly. Just something small. It's lovely, he said. You have a good hand. You could sell these at the market if you wanted. Linda laughed softly, shaking her head. Who would buy something I make? Nathan smiled. You'd be surprised. Tourists love handmade things. The idea stuck in her mind. She spent the next few days making a few more small items, simple bracelets, little charms, and tiny decorations. Her hands moved with a quiet rhythm, helping her heart heal slowly. Claire encouraged her. You're doing wonderfully, Linda. With their support, Linda gathered the courage to try selling a small batch at the weekly village market. She sat behind a small table with her handmade crafts displayed neatly. At first, she felt nervous, her hands sweating. But then a young traveler stopped by. These are lovely, the traveler said. Did you make them? Linda nodded shyly. I'll take two, the traveler said with a warm smile. Linda felt a small spark of hope rise inside her. Throughout the day, more people stopped by, complimenting her work, buying little things, and chatting kindly with her. Each kind word built a small piece of her shattered confidence. At the end of the day, Linda held a small envelope of money. It wasn't much, but it was a start. For the first time since Laura left her, she felt a little stronger. Each day that followed brought new progress. She continued helping around the inn, making crafts in the evenings, and selling them at the market on weekends. She made friends in the village, and people began recognizing her. They admired her strength and her gentle spirit. Linda still carried the pain of what Laura had done, but something new was growing inside her: independence, confidence, and a quiet determination. She had been abandoned with nothing. But here, in this small Scottish village, she was starting to rebuild her life piece by piece. Linda never expected her small craft hobby to turn into something bigger, but life has a way of surprising people when they least expect it. As the days passed, she found herself settling more comfortably into the rhythm of the village. She woke early to help Claire prepare breakfast for guests at the inn, spent the afternoons working on new pieces, and visited the market each weekend to sell her handmade items. Slowly, quietly, her life began to grow again. Tourists started recognizing her table at the market. They would smile at her simple bracelets and small wooden charms, asking how long she had been making them. Linda always answered shyly, telling them she was still learning. But more and more people bought her items, sometimes even asking if she could make custom pieces. One afternoon, a couple visiting from Germany stopped by her table. The woman picked up a small blue bracelet and admired it closely. "This is beautiful," she said. "You have a gentle touch." Linda felt her cheeks warm with pride. "Thank you. I'm glad you like it." The woman smiled. "We're traveling for a few weeks. I'd love to order a matching set for my daughters. Could you make two more like this?" Linda nodded, trying to hide her excitement. "Of course. I can have them ready by tomorrow." Moments like these gave her courage she didn't know she still had. Nathan and Claire noticed her progress and encouraged her even more. "You have a gift, Linda," Claire often told her. "You bring warmth into everything you make. People feel that." Hearing those words meant everything to her. She had spent so many years feeling unseen and unappreciated that the sudden support felt almost unreal. One evening, Nathan brought his laptop into the dining area and placed it in front of her. "Linda," he said, "I think it's time you tried selling these online. You could reach more people than just the market." Linda stared at the screen nervously. She had never been confident with technology, and with her phone gone, she had not used the internet much since arriving. "I don't know if I can do that," she whispered. Nathan gave her a gentle smile. "You can. And we'll help you." Together, they created a small online shop. Nathan took photos of her crafts, Claire wrote simple descriptions, and Linda chose the items she wanted to sell. It felt strange to see her work displayed on a website, almost unreal. But it also felt like a new beginning. Within a week, she received her first online order. Linda stared at the message in disbelief. Someone in Canada wanted 3 of her keychains. She felt a warm rush of joy and gratitude. Slowly, more orders came in from France, Australia, and even Japan. Each message brought a new spark of hope. Her earnings grew bit by bit. Not enough to make her rich, but enough to give her security, something she had not felt since Laura abandoned her. She began saving her money carefully, planning quietly for the future. The villagers admired her strength. People often stopped her on the street just to say hello or compliment her latest creations. Some asked her to teach simple craft workshops at the community center. Linda agreed shyly, unsure at first, but the small classes filled quickly. Children laughed as they worked with beads and ribbons, and adults praised Linda for her patience. As the weeks turned into months, Linda felt herself changing. She no longer woke up with the same heavy sadness. She still missed Laura, of course she did, but the sharp pain had softened. She had cried until her heart felt empty, but now she was filling it with new experiences, new friendships, and a new sense of purpose. One quiet evening, she sat near the window of her room at the inn, looking out at the soft golden glow of the village lights. The sky was a deep blue, the air cool and calming. Linda wrapped her hands around a warm cup of tea and allowed herself to breathe deeply. She realized she was no longer the same woman who had arrived in Scotland with nothing. She had rebuilt her life from the ground up. She had discovered strength she never knew she had. And for the first time in a long time, she felt proud of herself. One morning, Claire approached her with a gentle smile. "Linda," she said softly, "I think it's time you start thinking about your next step. You've grown here. You've healed. Maybe one day you'll want to return home." Linda looked down thoughtfully. The idea had been sitting in the back of her mind for a while now. She was stronger, more confident, and more stable than she had been in years. She had money saved, a successful online shop, and people around the world buying her work. She was no longer a woman abandoned and broken. She was a woman rising. That night, she made a quiet decision. She would return home. Not to beg. Not to explain herself. Not to confront Laura in anger. But to show herself and anyone watching that she had survived. She packed her suitcase with steady hands. There were no tears, no shaking. Just calm. She hugged Nathan and Claire tightly, promising to stay in touch and visit again. As she left the village, she felt a mixture of sadness and gratitude. Scotland had helped her find herself again. It had given her peace, purpose, and strength. Now it was time to return home as a new woman. Stronger, independent, and far more successful than the daughter who had tried to break her. The months that followed were filled with change for her. She stayed focused on her work and kept learning more about managing money and running small projects. She did not try to show off or prove anything. She simply wanted to build a stable life without fear or stress. Every step she took made her feel stronger. She still thought about her daughter at times, but the anger inside her had softened. The pain was still there, but she no longer let it control her. She told herself that people sometimes make bad choices, and nothing could change what had already happened. What mattered now was how she moved forward. Her savings continued to grow because she worked with discipline and used everything she had learned. She started helping a few other women in the community by sharing simple ways to save money and earn extra income. She did not see herself as a teacher, but they saw her as someone who understood real struggles. Talking to them made her feel less alone. One afternoon she received a message from an old neighbor back home. They told her that her daughter was facing problems and had been telling people she regretted her choices. Hearing this brought back mixed emotions. Part of her felt sad, and another part felt tired. She did not know if she wanted to reconnect or if it would only reopen old wounds. She took a walk near the water to clear her mind. The wind was gentle, and the sound of the waves helped calm her. She realized she had changed so much. She was no longer the woman who depended on others for approval. She had learned how to stand on her own, how to trust her own judgment, and how to protect herself. She decided she would forgive her daughter in her heart, but she would not rush to return to the past. She needed peace, and rebuilding trust would take time. She knew she had every right to set boundaries, even if people expected her to forget everything. Some friends encouraged her to go back home and show everyone how successful she had become, but she refused. She did not want revenge. Her success was for herself, not to make someone else feel small. She had worked hard to build her new life, and she was proud of the person she had become. Weeks later, she received a small letter from her daughter. The words were simple. Her daughter apologized and said she hoped one day they could talk again. She held the letter for a long time without saying anything. There was sadness, but also a quiet understanding that this was a step. She did not respond right away. She wanted to think carefully. She knew that healing was a slow process and that rushing could break everything again. But she also knew that someday she might be ready to speak to her daughter with a calm and open heart. For now, she chose to keep growing. She kept building her work, kept caring for her small community, and kept living with purpose. She had come to Scotland with nothing, abandoned and broken, yet she had returned to her life stronger, wiser, and far more successful than she ever imagined. Her journey taught her that strength is not loud. It grows quietly inside a person who refuses to give up. She had found her strength, and she carried it with her every day.